Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Sarah Getz, a new assistant professor of forensic investigation in the Criminal Justice and Social Sciences Department. I'm here to give you a quick introduction to how to find and document evidence, Halloween edition. At a crime scene, the primary way in which we identify suspects and reconstruct what happened is through the use of physical evidence. Depending on the crime, almost anything could be evidence, but they're all grouped into three types: biological, impression, and manufactured. Biological evidence, like blood, can link you directly to a suspect through DNA, while hairs are less definitive but can help you narrow down who you're looking for. Similarly, impression evidence, like fingerprints, can identify a specific person, while usually footprints and impressions of tire treads once again help you to narrow down your pool of suspects. Finally, manufactured evidence comes from mass-produced items such as paint or fibers. Their characteristic size, shape, and chemical composition can be used to identify when, where, and by whom they were manufactured. In addition to looking for evidence that you can link to potential suspects, you should also look for things that can tell you when a crime occurred. Look for items with a time or a date. For example, if today's newspaper was brought into the house, then the crime likely occurred after that time. You can also look for temperature-sensitive items. For example, cooked food that's still hot, ice cubes that are nearly melted, or a car engine that's still warm. Things like a wet shower curtain or a damp towel on the floor can also give some indication of timing and information about what may have occurred. Probably the least sexy and interesting, but most critical of all things that occur at a crime scene is documentation. Once you start moving around a scene and collecting evidence, you can never put it back the way it was, so you only get one chance to do it right. For anything that you find, you should first describe it in your notes. What does it look like? Who found it? And where? You should also make a rough sketch of the scene. Draw in the key features, walls, doors, furniture, and mark in the location of important things that you find. Be sure to either number the items or use different symbols with a key so that you can remember later on what each thing is. Finally, take photographs of the scene, the location of each piece of evidence, and close-ups of any details before you touch or move anything. Notes, photographs, and sketches of the scene, including all of your evidence, are the key to identifying suspects, reconstructing events, and ultimately solving crimes. Once you've identified and collected all of your evidence, what does each piece tell you? Can you identify a suspect? Do you know when the crime happened? Do you have any idea what took place? Create an idea of what occurred and figure out whether each piece of evidence supports your idea or not. In the end, all of your evidence must make sense. If it doesn't, what are you missing, or what else could have taken place? Good luck and happy hunting.
Sorry. Uh, I'm supposed to give you a lecture on um, an attack with edged weapons and how to investigate it. So, if you please pay close attention to some of the things I have to say, and I have to look at my notes every now and then. Okay, all right, thank you. All right, my notes. Well, in my notes it says that you're supposed to always do a walkthrough of your crime scene, and then you're supposed to take photographs and videos of the crime scene. After that, you make a field sketch, a diagram for, and everything has to get measured into everything gets measured into your diagram. Even the tiniest bit of evidence. On my notes again, please. Uh, okay. Um, so the assumption is that you have a serial murderer in this investigation. This person's been killing a whole lot of people with edged weapon of some kind. So obviously, there's going to be bloodshed in one of those situations, and people are going to bleed all over. Um, if their victim has been running away, they're going to bleed, um, and the suspect's going to chase them until, of course, they're done. So one of the things you have to do is follow the blood trail, um, and until you find your victim. Um, now, on occasion, your suspect is going to cut themselves when they stab somebody. It's gruesome, but it might happen. In which case, the blood trail leaving the crime scene might be because your suspect, Freddie or Jason or whoever, has cut themselves and they're freely bleeding on the ground as they leave the scene. So you want to follow that and photograph it and occasionally take a few samples here and there using DNA-free swabs. And then you got to process all that stuff. But you want to see if you can figure out if the DNA is for the suspect, or if it perhaps might be uh, the trail that you're following is the victim who ran away, and then you know it's the victim's blood. So you want to examine that stuff. And now, if at any point in time you find the clothing that belongs to the suspect, it's going to have blood stains on it regardless. Maybe on the shoes, on the tops of the shoes. Maybe they stepped in the blood. So you're going to look on the bottoms of the shoes. Let me take my notes. I'll take a look at my notes here. Um, oh yeah. So yeah, there you go. You're gonna want to examine the clothing carefully. Um, and if the blood is only belong to the victim, then you tie the clothing from the suspect to the crime. Now, to tie the suspect to the clothing, you might want to swab the collar of the shirt or inside surfaces of the clothing to see if it picked up skin cells from the suspect. In that case, then you want to collect those samples to figure out who your suspect is. Okay, so now there's that. Um, and now and you want to figure out what kind of weapon they used. You have a couple of different things that you can look for on the body of the victims. Um, you want to examine the shape of the wounds. If it's a long wound, it's probably a slash. You know, they slashed them with the knife, and it's going to leave a longer rather than a deeper type of injury. The deeper injuries are going to be a stab wound, and it's going to go in and kind of leave a certain shape for the entry wound. Let me see if I can find something in my notes here that can better illustrate that. Um, well, uh, maybe not. Well, here we go. All right. Oh, sorry. Here we go. We got that. So the injuries for um, like a kitchen knife. Kitchen knife kind of has a flat top to it. You know, kind of. It kind of looks like that. Okay, and so the bottom edge here is what's sharp. This this is the sharp edge down here. Okay, and you see that's the sharp edge right there, and it's gonna leave, if it's a stab wound, then it's gonna leave an injury that kind of looks like this. Is kind of flat on the top. See, it's flat on the top and pointy on the bottom where it penetrates, and that's the top edge, and then that's the sharp edge at the bottom. Okay, now the other kind of slashing type of another type of stab wound is from a knife that's double edged. Find one here. I'll draw a picture of one. Okay, and let's see. This here one is a double edged knife. It's got sharp on the top and sharp on the bottom. So you want to look for, and a lot of times that type of wound is going to have this kind of wound. It's going to be sharp on the top and sharp on the bottom because it's cutting as it goes in, and that makes that kind of injury. Okay, so those are the kind of wounds that are going to tell you an idea of what kind of knife they were using. Um, and a slash wound, like I said, a slash wound is going to be long, and a stab wound is going to be, smaller, depending on the size of the blade, of course. Other things like, let's say somebody is attacked with a very heavy type of cutting weapon, like an axe. Okay, well, there's going to be most axes are not all that sharp that they can cut through skin, but they will lacerate the skin because of the sheer weight of the axe, and which also means it's gonna cause damage that's gonna have bruises as well as a cut. So there'll be bruising around the tissue because of the impact of that heavy weapon, the axe. Um, uh, Other types of weapons, like let's just say somebody finds a steak knife or a serrated knife, you cut the steak with at the restaurant. Well, then it's going to have kind of like jagged edges at the bottom of the injury because it's going to have like little tiny teeth. I'll see if I can draw a picture of little tiny teeth on a steak knife. Here we go. This one here is kind of like a steak knife. You see it's got little teeth on there, little teeth. And those are going to leave jagged edges down here at the entry wound where it goes in. It's going to leave kind of little cuts in the tissue and in the muscle that goes inside the body. So you're going to look for those things, and that will give you some clues as to what kind of weapon your bad guy was using. Let's give me a second here. I gotta check something out. What else was I going to talk about? Let's see. No, that's not. You don't you did look for the clothing belonging to the suspect in case he's found. You want to tie that in with your victims. Um, um, let's see. Other things. Uh, you might want to look for some other things here too, and just about any evidence that you can find. Like sometimes the bad guy takes photographs, for their trophies, or they steal something from the body of the victim, and that's always a possibility. They want to remember what they've done uh, on that particular day and night to specific victims. Um, um, Now, yes, if you do find a weapon, of course you're going to be wearing gloves, but handle it very carefully. You don't want to contaminate it. You want to photograph it, measure it, and then swab any areas of the blade for the victim's blood. And then the handle, you want to swab that separately because it's probably going to have some DNA, maybe, let's hope, from our suspect. Um, Now, in the situation where the knife has been perhaps washed, um, you might want to consult with somebody who can disassemble the blade. They might take out the screws or the bolts that hold the handle on there and then examine underneath there because sometimes blood will saturate underneath there and you can find little bits and pieces of bloody tissue underneath the wood or the plastic handle. Anyway, so yeah, it's a lot of observation skills, a lot of remember you got to walk through the scene, you got to photograph the scene, you got to measure everything into your diagram, and then eventually you start collecting the evidence. But those are some of the things that I think you should focus on. Is that all right with you? Is that all right? Okay. Well, I have a lot of other things to do right now, so I'll let you go. Good luck and be careful because sometimes these guys sneak up behind you while you're investigating, and then you become the next victim.